cleaned out Vaughn's pocket. I needed a living witness. Someone who could place Miller at the scene. Someone whose word couldn't be washed away by a crooked internal investigation or a smart defense attorney. In the patrol log, buried at the very bottom where they list the throwaway details nobody reads, there was a mention of a midnight janitor swept up during the initial canvass. A Salvadoran national named Mateo Gomez. The responding officers wrote, "Witness Mateo Gomez, language barrier, claims he saw nothing, cleared and released." It was the signature of the same dirty cops who'd cut him loose to keep him from talking. Or maybe they just didn't view an undocumented immigrant as a threat worth eliminating on the spot. But I knew how guys like Mateo operated. When you're undocumented, you notice everything because you're always looking for the trap. You keep your head down, you watch the shoes, you watch the cars. Through a couple of old contacts in the Brooklyn underground, I tracked down where Mateo had gone to ground. He wasn't a fool. After that night, he skipped his shift, left his rented room, and vanished. He knew he'd seen something that could get him a permanent coat of cement. He'd hidden himself in the bowels of the industrial sector of Red Hook, among the abandoned shipping warehouses where the city's invisible population goes to disappear. By 9 in the morning, the storm had turned Red Hook into a maritime purgatory. The waterfront was frozen solid, the East River churning with gray, slushy waves. The wind off the water was enough to take your breath away. I found the location, a crumbling brick husk of an old textile mill. The heat had been dead for a decade. The only thing coming out of the pipes was frozen condensation. I slipped through the rusted fire door, marked lock drawn and hanging low. Every step forward was a chore for my taped ribs. The air inside smelled of damp, rot, rust, and old fear. "Mateo," I called out in a low whisper. "Mateo, my name is Silas Vane. I'm with Raymond Cruz. I'm here to help." I know about the cruiser. Nothing but the skitter of rats in the shadows and the distant sloshing of the river against the pilings. I pushed deeper, down a set of concrete steps, into the boiler room. The heavy iron door had been forced off its hinges. My gut sank. On the concrete floor, next to a rusted dead furnace, lay a shape. It was Mateo, a small man in a grease-stained canvas jacket. He was slumped in a wide pool of blood that had already begun to congeal, turning into a terrible dark crust on the floor. His eyes were wide open, glassy, locked in the same primal terror I'd seen on Dr. Vaughn. They'd worked him over before they put the bullet in him. His fingers were broken back at unnatural angles. The cartel had beaten me to the punch. I dropped to one knee beside him, feeling something wither inside me. This kid was just shoveling snow. He was just trying to earn a few bucks to send back to El Salvador. He didn't have a stake in their multi-million-dollar drug ports or their golden police shields. He was just a guy in the wrong place at the wrong time, and they slaughtered him like an animal, stamping him into the dirt of a New York basement. I checked his neck for a pulse, but he was already ice cold. They'd done the deed an hour ago, which meant they were close. Very close. Maybe they were using me as their bird dog, letting me find the last loose ends so they could snip them behind me. I stood up, my hand tightening on the grip of my gun, waiting for the shadows to jump. But the boiler room stayed dead. They'd gotten what they came for, or so they thought. I was halfway to the stairs where my eyes caught something. The survival instinct of a guy who lives on the run makes him see things ordinary people miss. Mateo was dead, but he knew they were coming. When you spend your life dodging immigration and the law, you develop an antenna for the Grim Reaper. On the brickwork right above his head, someone had scratched a fresh mark with a chunk of furnace coal. It was a thick circle, and inside it, an arrow pointing directly to the ventilation grate of the old boiler system, set high up against the ceiling. It was a dead man's token. I dragged an old wooden crate over, stepped up onto it, ignoring the white-hot agony that flared across my chest, and reached into the vent. The grate was loose, hanging by a single rusted screw. I shoved my hand into the soot-choked duct. My fingers brushed against something heavy, cold, and wrapped in plastic. A vintage Panasonic microcassette recorder and a thumb drive. Mateo knew he wouldn't make the train, but he'd left a trail. One shot at leveling the score. I climbed down, sat on the crate right across from Mateo's body, and pressed play on the recorder. A small, trembling voice filled the concrete room, speaking in broken, halting English. "They come, I know. The man with the gold star, Miller. He was there that night. He come in the police car. He opened the door for the two men. I see them. One is Marcos, the killer from Los Negros. I make the video on my old phone. I hide. The file is on the drive. If you find this, make them pay for the lady." I stopped the tape. I pulled out my laptop, jammed Mateo's drive into the slot. A grainy, low-res video file popped up on the screen, shot through the street-level window of the Cruz building. The quality was garbage, but the truth was crystal clear. The patrol car pulls up. Detective Marcus Miller steps out. He looks around, walks up the stoop, pulls the key from under the planter, and unlocks the door. A minute later, two guys in heavy hoods slide out of the dark. They go inside. Miller stays on the stoop, casually lighting a cigarette, watching the street. 15 minutes later, the hitters come out. One of them hands Miller a heavy brick wrapped in plastic. They shake hands, and the cruiser rolls away into the snow. End of the line. Hard, undeniable proof. It had everything. The faces of the hitters, the face of the dirty cop, the conspiracy to commit murder in the first degree. I pocketed the drive and the recorder, slipping them next to my Glock. I was standing at the final fork in the road. Option 1. I hand this to Cruz. He takes his service piece, walks into the precinct, and turns the place into a slaughterhouse. He kills Miller, maybe punches a hole through the captain, and then the tactical boys cut him down on the spot. The system survives. A few pieces get shuffled on the board, and Ray dies in a pool of blood, or spends his life in a cage. Option 2. I take it to the feds or the press. But I know how the machine works in this city. The case gets tied up in grand juries for 3 years. Half the evidence gets thrown out on a technicality. The cartel hires top-tier silk from Manhattan, and Miller gets a medical retirement with a full pension. Then there was option 3. My option. The Silas Frost Vane option. I stood up, adjusted my coat, and looked down at Mateo one last time. "Rest easy, kid," I said softly. "Your shift's over. I've got the watch." I walked out of the mill. The storm outside had reached its crescendo, a blinding white wall that completely erased the New York skyline. The city looked dead, buried under a clean white sheet, but under that snow was a fire I was about to ignite. I got into the Chevy, picked up a throwaway burner, and dialed Raymond Cruz's number. "Ray," I said when the line picked up, his heavy, ragged breathing filling my ear. "I have it all. Your partner Miller let them in. I've got the tape." A long, suffocating silence stretched over the wire. I could hear his teeth grinding together through the phone. "Where is he?" Cruz rasped. "Listen to me, Ray," I said, my voice cold and flat as the ice on the river. "We aren't going to the house. You meet me at the old Pier 42 down in Brooklyn. I'm going to bait Miller and his cartel handlers out to the water. We're going to make them pay for Elena. And we're going to make them pay for the kid they just murdered in Red Hook. We're burning the house down tonight, Ray, but we do it my way. You with me?" "I'm with you, Frost," Cruz said quietly, and the line went dead. I threw the car into drive. It was going to be a long, bloody night on the frozen edge of Brooklyn. The snow kept falling, hiding the sins of the city, but I knew that by dawn, the ice was going to turn red. And for the first time in a long time, the cold didn't bother me at all. I had enough fuse inside me to burn the whole damn town.